What I find very interesting is that there's a huge amount of talk now about violence against women. In fact, you can barely avoid the talk on violence against women, but it doesn't for me constitute an outcry. I'm Purna Sen. I'm new to the LSE, here to be director of a new African leadership program. And the program seeks to provide people from Africa in leadership positions an opportunity to engage with leading thinkers and practitioners on issues that will be relevant to African development. Well, over several decades I've been involved in work that seeks in different ways to make the world a better place in terms of tackling inequality and discrimination and marginalisation. And I've worked in a number of NGOs, women's groups mostly, human rights organisations, refugee groups, to try and do some advocacy, lobbying, research to support that sort of work. I used to teach here at the LSE. I used to run the Masters in Gender and Development, but I left here 6 years ago to work for Amnesty International as director of their work in Asia and the Pacific, a very complicated brief which took in Afghanistan, Burma, Sri Lanka, North Korea. And after that, most recently, I was head of human rights for the Commonwealth, which also was a very wide brief, working with 54 member states to support their work to promote human rights. I'm very concerned by the levels of abuse that women continue to face, no matter where they are, who they are, what levels of education they have, whether they're in poor rural areas or in very wealthy urban homes. It seems to me incredible the number of women's lives that are lost doesn't prompt international outcry in the way that a civil war or an act of terror causes the world to convulse with horror. But the figures of women's abuse are astonishing, and the ability of men, and it is primarily men, to continue to treat women in this way seems to be a historical fact. So my interest is in how we change that. Not so much the forms of violence, because I think we know that, but how do we change that? And my assumption is that we won't change it unless women say it has to change, because looking to men to change that is slightly optimistic without a big push. So I've worked quite a bit on how women resist violence, what resources they can call to their aid to make violence stop in their lives. It seems to me a lot of work around violence is taken in isolation from the bigger context in which women live their lives. So you can find a lot of people talking about violence, and you get some very good changes in the law now across many countries that offer women better protection. But you get very, very little interest in looking at the bigger context, like why are women still not earning the same as men? Why is it we still have extremely poor representation of women in political processes? Now, you can't take one aspect of gender relations or women's lives in isolation and fix it, because if you haven't got women in legal processes and political processes, making laws, implementing laws, looking at how victims and witnesses are treated, then you don't really find the right solutions. My grandmother would not recognize the lives and choices that my daughters have. And I think it would be remiss of us not to acknowledge the massive changes that have happened. But I think we'd also be overly optimistic if we neglect to recognize the resistance, the staying power of the structures that still make men and women unequal. So, yes, I believe phenomenal change has happened. I don't believe enough change has happened, nor do I see that those changes are secure. I think the struggles for those gains that we secure must be constant, and we must be ever watchful, because that resistance that I say and the powers that operate against women will jump up and bite us if we leave that space unprotected. So any gains that we secure, we must protect while still fighting for more.